Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege, as it is every day, to have you guys joining me here on the special, slightly earlier than normal edition of the show on Sunday. Now, normally on Saturdays and Sundays, I like to do the show at 9 a.m., but I've got some things I got to do today with Ann, with family stuff, so I decided to move it a little bit earlier and do it at 8 a.m. today. So thank you for all you guys who are joining us even a little bit earlier than we normally do this. Hey guys, I'm going to let you know this is how today's show is going to go. I've picked out 5 topics that you guys have sent in to me. Now, how do you send in a topic to me and get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show? It's really quite simple. You just email me anytime simply at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com, and make sure you put that word topic in the subject line. Once again, put the word topic in the subject line, or else I'm not going to see your email. And of course, as always, guys, keep your words to your emails to 90 words or less. If they're any longer than that, I'm not even going to bother reading them, because even if I wanted to use it, I couldn't fit it on the screen. So with all that out of the way, guys, I'm going to let you guys know this too. For those of you who are here on Sunday, I'm going to give you a little bit of a special announcement. As you know, I'm still playing around. When I started the show back up in beginning of July, I said I'm going to kind of experiment for the next 6, 7 months, whatever, to kind of find the right time. So this past week, I've been doing the John Campea Show live Monday through Friday at noon Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to try this week doing it live at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that would be, I think, 1 o'clock New York time, Eastern Standard Time. So anyway, starting tomorrow for this week, I'm going to test doing the John Campea Show from Monday to Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Once again, that should be 1 p.m. East Coast time. And if you live in a different time zone, just look it up and see what that'll be for you. So just letting you guys, giving you guys the heads up on that so you know what's going on with that. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump into the first question of the day. And the very first question today comes to us from David Apling. And David Apling writes, "Hi, John. I'm a big fan from Sweden." Well, thank you so much, David. "Keep up the great flow of movie news." Well, I really appreciate you saying that, man. That's much appreciated. Okay, my question is about the 2 movies about Winston Churchill coming out. One being The Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman, and the other called Churchill with Brian Cox. Which one do you think will be better, and which one are you most excited for? Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And actually, to clarify, the one with Brian Cox, I believe that one's already released in most markets, and in the United States, it didn't get a major distributor. Now, I know Lionsgate, which is a major distributor, they got the UK distribution rights, but they did not sign up for the American distribution rights, and there's a smaller distribution company, and I believe they put that film out in the United States in limited release back in July. I could be wrong about that. Look it up, guys, in case I'm wrong about that. But anyway, so that one's come and gone. But the one I'm really been excited about is this one with Gary Oldman. I mean, when this picture first came out, I remember when this picture first came out like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, I didn't even think it was Gary Oldman. Somebody told me it's Gary Oldman. That's not Gary Oldman. I had to look really close, and sure enough, it's Gary Oldman doing it. The previews have looked spectacular. I'm actually hoping, my fingers are crossed, I may actually get a chance to go watch this movie today. I'm hoping that a little bit later today, I'm going to have a chance to sit down and watch Darkest Hour a little bit later today, because not only do the previews look amazing, but some of the people who have seen it at like advanced festivals and stuff like that, everybody's saying that Gary Oldman is number one, he's a shoo-in for a Best Actor nomination and could be the front runner to win Best Actor at the Academy Awards. Now, you got to take that with a grain of salt, because this year Daniel Day-Lewis is in a movie. He's, of course, got The Phantom Thread coming out, so you know he's going to be a contender as well. But I think the trailers have looked spectacular. It's based on one of the most fascinating individuals in human history, Winston Churchill, set during one of the most pivotal times of human history. And it's got one of the world's best actors yet to have an Academy Award sitting on his mantle, in Gary Oldman. So there's a lot of really good things surrounding this movie. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see it. Hopefully, once again, I'll get to see it today. And if I do get to see it today, you'll see my review for it either up to later tonight or maybe sometime tomorrow. You'll see my review up for it. But definitely between the two, easily for me, it's Darkest Hour. And that's not a slight on the Brian Cox one whatsoever. I just haven't had a chance to see it, and I don't even think it's getting a wide release here in the United States. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question. All right, we move on now to question number 2. And question number 2 today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Dion Shepard, who writes, my question is, what would be the likelihood of Warner Brothers selling off their rights to DC to another studio? All right, now you would be surprised how often, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, how often I get that question emailed into me. You know, okay, so Warner Brothers right now has the rights to the DC properties. What if somebody else, can they sell them off to somebody else? What if somebody else got them? Blah, 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 blah. And I've kind of mentioned this before, but it comes up so often, it's got to be repeated. And maybe you guys can share this with your circles as well. This is not, like Warner Brothers having the rights to the DC films is not like, say, Fox having the rights to the X-Men films or Sony having the rights to Spider-Man. Whereas, you know, X-Men and Spider-Man are Marvel properties, but, you know, Fox has the rights to the X-Men and Deadpool and things like that. Sony has the rights to Spider-Man. See, Warner Brothers doesn't have the rights to DC and their films. Warner Brothers is DC. Warner Brothers owns DC. DC is a part of Warner Brothers. So, see, once again, like Fox does not own the X-Men. They simply have the movie rights. They have the movie production rights and distribution rights for X-Men. But X-Men, the property, belongs to Marvel, even though the movie rights right now belong to Fox. Fox has the rights. That's not the situation here. Warner Brothers owns DC. They are DC. So they don't simply have the rights. And so, really, what you'd then be asking is, what's the chance that Warner Brothers just sells off DC? Zero. Zero chance they do that. Because it would be one of the most monumentally idiotic things they could ever do. Because you can say, but John, you know, they've kind of botched their DC cinematic universe. Okay, fine, you can have that opinion. That's fair. But even if they had completely botched their DC cinematic universe, and I'm not saying they have, but, you know, they should reboot it. But even if they had, that makes no difference. The hottest genre in the movie industry is by far the comic book genre. And DC has some of the greatest superheroes of all time. And some of the most recognizable superheroes of all time. Even if their DC cinematic universe wasn't really working well right now, that means nothing. Because just because it's not working right now, you can hold on to it for 5 years, reboot it again, and make $20 billion over the next 15 years. So what are you going to do? You're going to sell off DC now for what? $3 billion, $4 billion? Okay, that's great. But you got to think long term. Long term, they could make $20, $30 billion off this property over the long term. To sell it off would be ridiculous, even if their current incarnation right now isn't working. That's okay. Just be patient. Take a step back. Take a breath. Reboot. And then if that doesn't work, you do it again. The point being that long term, you have a cash cow. And you don't sell off your cash cow for 3 beans with a magic beanstalk just because something isn't working right now. You be a little bit patient and you collect long term. That's what these companies do. These companies tend to think more long term. So yeah, number one, Warner Brothers does not have the rights to DC. They own DC. Number two, they wouldn't be looking to sell off DC because they stand to make a lot more money long term than they would just some short term little gain that they would sell off now. So anyway, that's just the way I got it. If you guys have some input on that, jump down to the comment section and leave your thoughts. All right, we move on now to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us from Patreon supporter Joe Zapata, who writes, "Hey John, I love the show. Thank you so much, Joe. I understand your heartfelt distaste for what the Warner Brothers executives did, if true. However, if any of us were in the same position like them, like they were, I think is what you meant to say, we would be getting a $1 million bonus or more. We would all do the same thing. Our society runs on money and greed is good. What are your thoughts?" Okay, for those of you who may not be knowing what Joe is talking about and you haven't watched the show for the last couple of days, there was a report that came out from the Wrap with an insider at Warner Brothers who revealed the full extent of the chaos and mess over at Warner Brothers regarding the DC Cinematic Universe. But the most troubling thing in that report was that their source said that the reason Kevin Tsujihara, who you guys, if you've watched me for any period of time, you know I'm a fan of Kevin Tsujihara. But their claim is that Kevin Tsujihara, CEO of Warner Brothers, that the exclusive reason they would not allow Justice League to be pushed off into 2018 so that Joss Whedon and his team could have enough time to do all those reshoots and do all the post work and everything that needed to be done in that movie. The report claims that the only reason Tsujihara did not let them do that is because he's guaranteed to get his bonus off the box office of Justice League if Justice League releases in 2017, and because of the upcoming AT&T acquisition, that if it released sometime in 2018, he's not guaranteed that bonus. And that was the reason he did not allow them to push off the movie, even though everybody acknowledged it would be for the best. That's the reason they didn't allow it to go into 2018. Now, my point and the argument I made about that is simply this, is that if you guys have upper leadership, and I got quite upset about this, if you guys remember, if you have upper leadership that is purposefully undermining and sabotaging your films and your franchise just so they can make a couple of extra bucks personally, that's in corporate terms, that's treason. That is treason. If true, and if this report is right, and we cannot emphasize that enough, that word if that is true, that is, in corporate terms, absolute treason. He has betrayed, if true, not only has he betrayed his responsibility to Warner Brothers, but he has, most importantly, betrayed the trust of the DC fans. He's totally betrayed them. If that's the case, he's got to go. And not just him, the entire upper leadership of Warner Brothers has to be swept away. If you've got that kind, again, but if you've got that type of corporate corruption going on in your company, that entire leadership has to go. And the board of Warner Brothers has to step in, clean house, get rid of everybody, and install new leadership. Now, the funny thing that has shocked me is that a bunch of people, not just you, Joe, there have been a number of people, a lot of people share your sentiment that have emailed me saying, well, you know, it's not that big of a deal, like everybody's greedy. Yes, everybody's greedy. And yes, to quote Gordon Gekko, greed works. Greed does work. I mean, the reason Marvel is going to keep cranking out good movies is because they know they make more money if they crank out good movies. They're being greedy, but that works because that means we get better movies. And that could be the guiding principle as well for something like Warner Brothers as well. So yes, everybody's greedy. Yes, you're greedy and I'm greedy. And yeah, everybody fundamentally is greedy. I get that and I have no problem with that. However, this is not just a simple case of somebody just being a little bit greedy. This is sabotaging your own company. This is sabotaging your own fans for the sake of you making a couple extra bucks. Kevin Tsujihara is a multimillionaire several times over already. But it's one thing to go, hey, I'll make some decisions here and there that hopefully will be good for the company, but I could reap extra benefits. Okay, I get that. I got no problem with that. But to say, I'm going to screw over my own company that I have a fiscal responsibility to, I'm going to screw them all over, that's criminal. There's a difference between just normal greed that we all have, and yeah, we'll do what we can do to get the extra buck. That's human nature. We do that. But that's a big difference. There's a huge leap going from that to sabotaging your own company that you have a responsibility to and a fandom that you have a responsibility to. That's a horse of a totally different color. That's not just greed. That's criminal. All right, that is in corporate terms, again, I'm not using it in the national terms, but that is in corporate terms treasonous. And that's a whole different story. So I appreciate, Joe, that you have one certain point of view. And again, as I said, Joe, you're not the only one who has that particular point of view. But it's a big difference between that and just simple greed. There's a huge monumental difference, at least the way I see it. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question. All right, guys. Hey, listen, somebody had sent in a super chat. And as you guys know, I like to stop and address super chats when they come in. And this super chat just came in from LG3 Nation, who wrote in, your shows are great. Thank you so much, LG3 Nation. I really appreciate that. By the way, just admit it, the mother of all spoilers for The Last Jedi is that Jar Jar Binks is now reincarnated as a porg. Well, no, what he's talking about is that I've been teasing for about a year now that I just happen to know like the mother of all spoilers for Star Wars The Last Jedi. But I am totally keeping it to myself until well after the movie comes out about that. But yeah, could it be Jar Jar centric? Who knows? Maybe it could be. That would be fascinating, wouldn't it? Anyway, oh, and by the way, I'm beyond it. It almost doesn't seem real to me. I get to see Star Wars The Last Jedi in 6 days. And I am starting to freak out. I am absolutely starting to freak out. I see it in 6 days, so I see it on Saturday. This coming Saturday is when I get a chance to finally watch this bad boy. I'm so excited. My heart's pounding. I'm really stoked. Anyway, thanks a lot. All right, we move on to the next topic. And the next topic today comes to us from Mike V. And Mike V writes, "Hey John, fellow Canadian here and big fan of the show. Thank you so much, Mike V. My question is, what are your thoughts on the news that David S. Goyer is going to be directing a Masters of the Universe movie? Does a new movie interest you, and thoughts on Goyer?" Well, let's start with the first part of your question there. I'm very interested in a Masters of the Universe movie. Completely excited for a Masters of the Universe movie. 100%. I thought they should have rebooted this thing like 5 years ago. So I'm all for it. Now, for the longest time, John M. Chu, who was the director of one of the G.I. Joes, and he was the director of a couple of the Justin Bieber documentaries, he was attached to do a Masters of the Universe film for the longest time. Now, Masters of the Universe right now is tentatively scheduled to release in December of 2019. And that was a very contentious date for a while because suddenly Star Wars Episode 9 moved to December of 2019 and Wonder Woman 2 was also in December of 2019. And as we all know now, Wonder Woman 2, once Star Wars moved into December of 2019, Wonder Woman 2 got the hell out of Dodge and they moved to early November of 2019 instead. Very smart move on the part of Warner Brothers. And that's going to pay off for them. So now we got Masters of the Universe that's supposed to be opening up December of 2019. I still have my doubts this is even going to happen. But I'm all for them doing another movie. Absolutely. As far as my thoughts on David S. Goyer, I'll be honest with you, I'll totally give it a shot. If the talks work out and he does end up being the director for this movie, I will completely give it a shot. I'm all for them giving it a shot. But I am not a fan of David S. Goyer as a director. Because as a director, he did one of the worst comic book films in history. Not the worst comic book film in history, but it ranks up there with Blade Trinity. Which is really too bad because the Blade franchise was unspeakably awesome up until that point. Like, Blade 2 was just absolutely killer to me. And then he also directed this little film that he also wrote, this little horror film back in 2009 called Unborn or The Unborn or something like that, which I didn't think was very good. So a couple of things that I have seen of him directing, I have not been a big fan of. Now, he's written some great stuff. He's actually one of the story credit guys on The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Now, he did not write the screenplay for The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises. He has story credit, which means him and Jonathan Nolan sat down and they came up with the story. Now, that could be a 20-page synopsis. It could be a 2-page treatment, but they came up with the story, and then Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan actually wrote out the full screenplay. But still, he has a story credit on those. He was one of the screenplay writers for Batman vs. Superman, which is going to turn some people off. He was one of the screenplay writers for Ghost Rider, Vengeance, the second Ghost Rider film, which might have been worse than the first one. But he's also written some really, really good stuff. He's a very good writer. Look, I would be more excited and interested if I just heard that David S. Goyer was writing Masters of the Universe, and he has. Apparently, David S. Goyer wrote the latest treatment for Masters of the Universe, and on that level, I'm actually kind of excited, because he has done some very good stuff. I gotta admit, though, I'm very cautious about the idea of him being the director, because again, The Unborn and Blade Trinity are not exactly shining diamonds on his resume as far as being a director goes, so I'm not stoked about that. But you know what? Look, if they bring him on, he wrote the script, if he does direct it, I will totally give it a shot and see what he does with it. I'll just be happy that we're getting a Masters of the Universe movie, finally. And if it's got to be with David Goyer directing, fine, let's give him a shot, let's see what happens. But don't expect me to be excited about that in advance, because he doesn't exactly have the best track record as a director up to this point. But who knows? Let's give it a shot, let's see what he gives us, and maybe he'll surprise us. All right, I had a couple more super chats come in here. First of all, without leaving a comment, Rob Turner put in a super chat but thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate that you doing that. And RCN Media writes, "Hey, John, I'm new here. What am I walking into?" Well, welcome around, RCN. You're walking into a whole bloody mess run by this ringleader here. So thank you so much for putting in the super chat. All right, let's move on now to the final emailed in topic of the day, and then we're going to go to your live questions. For those of you guys who are watching live, in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to start taking your live thoughts, opinions, and questions. The way you get one on live is to tweet to me at John Campea. Just send out a tweet at John Campea, and I will pull your tweets out from there. All right, with that out of the way, let's get to the final email question today. And the final email question today comes to us from Admin M, who writes, "Hello, John. Love the show." Well, thank you so much, Admin. Been a fan since AMC. So, I just saw Coco the other day and absolutely loved it. Of course you did. The movie's magnificent. Such great storytelling, characters, and music. I wanted to ask you, do you think any of the songs have a chance of getting nominations at the Oscars this year? Maybe Remember Me. Thanks, and keep up the great work. Yeah, Coco, Coco's just magical. Coco is such a great film, and I had some doubts about it. You guys will remember, I was a little bit apprehensive about Coco going into it. I wasn't really getting the gist of it from the marketing, but then again, after I saw the movie, I realized, yeah, this is a tough movie to market. How do you market this movie right? I'm not really sure. But anyway, they still did a fine job with it. And I fell in love with this movie. And one of the reasons I fell in love with it was the music. Now, I've said this before. The soundtrack to Coco is not something I would pop in and play whilst I'm driving in my car, you know? But in context of the movie, it was so perfect and magical. I use that word a lot when I'm talking about Coco. It was so perfect and magical. Like, it was just essentially beautiful. And that's really what a great song in a movie should be. Now, so should it and could it get some love for Best Song? Absolutely it will. But which song? See, Remember Me, that's a great song, and it's kind of the main theme that runs throughout the entire movie. But to me, that one song that Coco sings in the Ghost World, at the talent show on the Ghost World, and it's Something Loco. That song, to me, got everybody in the theater tapping their feet and getting into it. And to me, that might be the one I would nominate. There's also the one he sang when he shows up at Ernesto de la Cruz's party. And to get everybody's attention, he plays that one song. That was great too. But I think that Loco song is the one that I would personally nominate. It will probably end up being Remember Me, but we'll have to just kind of wait and find out and see if that actually is the case. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. All right, guys, I'm going to go now in just a second here to your live questions. But as I do every day, it's time for my 1-minute commercial break where I do my shameless plug for the one thing that keeps the lights on around here, which is my Patreon supporters. So check this out. We'll be back in just 1 minute. For those of you who have followed me for any period of time, you guys know that I made the decision recently to leave the corporate overlords. I no longer wanted to work for corporations. I wanted to be an independent content creator. And the only way I've been able to do that is by the support of my Patreon supporters. So what I would like to do is to ask you guys who watch my shows, who spend any amount of time with me every single month, to consider going over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. There you'll get all the information about what exactly does it mean to be a Patreon supporter of mine? What does being a Patreon supporter do for helping to make sure that shows like this one and all the other shows I do here on my channel can actually be produced? And on top of that, what benefits are there to being a Patreon supporter? And maybe if you guys can check that out, if you decide you want to be one of my Patreon supporters, that would be awesome. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy that you guys have decided to be here today and be a fellow movie fan and join us in the conversation. So go and check out the website, see if you want to become a Patreon supporter. And now let's get back. All right, guys, and a special thank you to all of you who are already Patreon supporters. Again, you guys are responsible for me even being able to do these shows, so thank you so much for your support on that level. All right, with that out of the way, let's get to the live tweets, and we're going to start off this one with a tweet from Johnny in London, who writes, "Greetings and salutations, John. Would or should another studio, like Paramount, make their own bid to Fox for X-Men and Fantastic Four?" Well, remember, Fox is not just selling off X-Men. They're not looking to just sell off individual properties like Fantastic Four and X-Men. They're looking to sell off their movie division. They're not looking to sell off just little pieces here and little pieces there. They want to sell off their movie division and a big chunk of their television division. What they want to get is one buyer to come in and buy everything that Fox is selling. Remember, Fox is not selling itself. Fox is still going to be around. It's just that Fox wants to change directions, according to the reports, to be more news and sports and things like that focused. So Fox is still going to exist. Fox is not selling Fox. But what they are doing is selling off a bunch of their assets, including their movie division and a whole chunk of their television division. And what they really want to do is get one buyer to come in, to put down one big chunk of money and sell that whole thing off to. It doesn't look to me like they're interested in piecemealing, selling off little piece here, little piece there, little piece there, little piece there. Because if they did that, if they just sold off, say, X-Men and Fantastic Four to, say, Paramount, then all of a sudden, the rest of the package is not as appealing to Disney. And you're like, apparently you've got Disney interested in buying that whole package. What are you going to do? Are you going to sell off the little pieces first, and now that whole package doesn't look anywhere near as appealing? Are you going to lose out on the big deal just so you can have this little smaller deal on the side? That really wouldn't make any sense. So, and Paramount is not in the market to buy an entire movie division or a television division, all that kind of stuff. The one main player here is Disney. So it's either going to be Disney or bust. And if the Disney deal does not go through, if they don't end up making a deal with Disney, and there's still a very good chance that they won't, but if they don't end up making a deal with Disney, then then maybe a little bit later down the line, you'll see them selling off piece by piece, things like that. But what they'd much rather do is make one big deal with Disney and get that done. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. All right, we move on now to the next Twitter question coming us from Borunda Joshua, who writes, "John, if Warner Brothers does reboot, would you want an all black or gray batsuit? Couldn't care less. Could not care less. I've seen the darker incarnations of the Batsuit work. I've seen the lighter color of the incarnations of the Batsuit work. Doesn't mean anything. And ultimately won't mean anything as to how good or how bad the movie is. I mean, that's ultimately the thing. The color of the suit will not have anything to do with whether or not the movie's good or bad. And I've seen different shades work. So really, to me, it's whatever they want to go with. I'm totally fine. As long as there are no bat nipples, then I'm good. I'm good. No bat nipples? Great. Make it fuchsia, for all I care. Make it plaid. A plaid, there you go. Let's have a Scottish Batman. Scottish Batman. And, we'll call him McBatman or something like that. And he'll wear plaid from top to bottom. That would be awesome. And instead of, batarangs, he's got, like, bat pipes. Instead of bagpipes, he's got bat pipes. Love it. I'm all on board now. I'm totally on board. And you get Mike Myers to play the role. Now I'm just getting silly. Okay, let's go on to the next question. This one comes to us from Ethan Sheeper, who writes, "John, what do you think will happen with Mad Max 2? Will it still be made at Warner or will GM go to another studio?" Look, to be honest, I'm not sure George Miller owns the rights anymore. I think Warner Brothers has the rights. I could be wrong about that. I need to double check that and look that up. And that's, I'm taking a live question here. I didn't have a chance to look that up. I believe Warner Brothers actually has the rights to it now. So I don't think George Miller can just up and take it to another studio. The problem, we've talked about this before, the problem with Mad Max 2 is that while everybody loves Mad Max Fury Road, it did not make money. It's almost unbelievable to imagine, but Mad Max Fury Road did not make money. You know what? Let me bring up the actual number here. Fury Road. Let me get up the full numbers here. So Mad Max Fury Road it didn't even make $400 million. It's a movie with a $150 million production budget, and worldwide it only made 378. That means it did not make a profit in theaters. It actually lost the studio a little bit of money in theaters. That's what's holding up Mad Max 2, is the fact that the studios look and say, hey, we lost money the last time we made a Mad Max movie. When you lose money, studios aren't rushing to get another one made all quick. So that's probably what is holding them up a little bit at this point. Let's see. This next one comes to us from JCSC, who writes, John, hello, John. Do you have plans on writing another book? I would love to write another book. The last one took me like 5 years. So I don't know that if something happens that I find myself having the time to do it, but right now I'm working like 10 to 12 hour days right now. So I don't have a lot of time to write another book, but I would love to if the opportunity avails itself. Let's see. This next one comes to us from Broomy Ballhead, who writes, John, isn't Joss Whedon overrated? His Avengers movies look expensive, like expensive TV shows. Age of Ultron was a bloated mess. That's great. Look, you're entitled to that opinion, and your opinion is every bit as valid as mine or anybody else's, and I celebrate that you have your opinion of it. I have a completely different opinion. I thought Age of Ultron, while not quite as good as the first Avenger, the first Avengers to me is the best comic book movie ever made. And there's a lot of people who agree with me. And a lot of people think something else is, and that's fine too. I think the first Avengers film is the best comic book movie ever made. Just is. And I thought Ultron was a really good, solid follow-up. Didn't live up to the first one, but I thought it was a solid follow-up. It made some mistakes, all that kind of stuff, yes, but it still ranks right up there. And there's a reason it's the second most successful comic book film of all time. So if you ask me, is Joss Whedon overrated? No, he is not. Joss Whedon is not overrated. Now, there's very, very few people out there either who consider Joss Whedon a Spielberg. No, he's just very good. And since the general consensus is that Joss Whedon is just very good, then no, he's not overrated at all. I think he is rated just as high as he should be. You know, is he Scorsese? Is he Spielberg? No, I wouldn't. Is he Christopher Nolan? No. So I wouldn't put him in that upper echelon, but he's damn good. And look, you don't go about making the two most successful comic book movies of all time without having something there. And that's what he did. He made the two most successful comic book movies of all time. And he made Justice League a more beloved, a more appreciated film than Batman vs. Superman was. And he only had 6 months. He just stepped in 6 months. He had no time because apparently Kevin Tsujihara thought his bonus check was more important than a good movie. But anyway, so what do you do with that? I mean, so again, I'm not downplaying your opinion. Your opinion is every bit as valid as mine. I'm just saying my opinion stands really, really opposed to yours. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This next one comes from Mr. C. Hana, who writes, John, do you miss Jim Carrey? What do you think he needs to resurrect his career? Maybe expanding to more dramas? Well, yeah, dramas, absolutely. He found his stride in that. You know what? As much as people didn't like, oh, what was that Steve Carell magician movie? The Wonderful Something Something. I forget the name of it, but it was out just a couple of years ago where he's the Las Vegas magician. I thought Jim Carrey was awesome in that movie. I thought he was funny and the whole bit. Yeah, but I think dramas is probably the way to go. He tried to do that Number 23. I think that was the name of the movie, the Number 23, which was just brutal. And I think his career lost a lot of momentum as a result of that movie. But, you know, he could reemerge in dramas pretty easy. Let's just see how the cookie crumbles, as the case may be. Let's see. Let's go here. This one comes to us from Nerd Attacks. John, what do you mean by reboot DC? I mean, start over. Pretend like everything else didn't happen, and just start with a brand new movie by Matt Reeves. You start with the Matt Reeves Batman. You get a new Batman, and you just pretend everything that has happened in the DCU didn't happen. It's exactly what they did with Spider-Man twice. And look how successful Spider-Man is now. I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming is like the most successful comic book movie this year, after rebooting twice in just a couple of years. The DCU can do the same thing because they've lost the audience. I'm sorry, like, everybody tries to have this argue with me. That's fine. You can have your opinion about the movies themselves, but what you cannot argue with is the numbers. And the numbers show clearly that the audience has been abandoning the DCU. Ever since Batman vs. Superman, which opened with 166 million, Then fewer people were excited to get out to see Suicide Squad. That opened up to 133 million. Then fewer people were excited to go to see Wonder Woman. That opened to 103 million. Then even fewer people were excited to go and see Justice League opening weekend, which opened to $94 million. When you open Justice League at $94 million, I'm sorry, there's no way around it. This isn't an opinion thing. This is, the facts are there. The numbers show the audience has been abandoning the DCEU. When that happens, reboot. Reboot. Look at all the success Marvel had with rebooting Hulk. Look at the success Sony had rebooting Spider-Man. Look at the success that Warner Brothers has had rebooting Batman. They've rebooted Batman a couple of times and had success. So, I mean, reboot. Just reboot the damn thing, start fresh, and that means that you have to give up on a couple of pieces that are working. Wonder Woman is working. I think Henry Cavill as Superman is working, but overall, you may have a nice steering wheel and nice hubcaps, but your car's a wreck. When your car's a wreck, you don't keep your car just because you like the nice steering wheel and the hubcaps are nice. You get rid of the car, get a brand new car that's going to work better. And I believe that's going to take some really hard decision making from good leadership at Warner Brothers to make. But I believe that is the decision they need to make. All right, I got another super chat just came in. This super chat came in from Vernon Lee, and Vernon Lee wrote in, "Love your work and dedication you bring us." Oh, thank you so much, Vernon. I really appreciate that. Again, a lot of people forget that I'm just like everybody else. I'm just some insecure human being with a fragile ego, and just like everybody else, I really appreciate it when people take the time to say things like that. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next tweet comes to us from Mikey7382, who writes, "John, can we see a Naked Gun type comedy in the future, like spoof comedies?" Here's the thing. Spoof comedies used to be awesome. They used to be so great. There was an era when you're talking about, you know, Hot Shots Part 2, and you're talking about the Airplane movies, and you're talking about Spaceballs, and you're talking about the Naked Gun movies, at least a couple of them. They were great eras. And then they just turned into these slobbering, moronic, stupid pieces of shit that we get these days that are called spoof movies that are just garbage. Absolute lowest common denominator, lowbrow garbage. Whereas all those other ones were like, yeah, was there like lowbrow stuff in there? Absolutely. But some of the lowbrow stuff was very high concept, and they were actually really smart and insightful and funny and witty. And a lot of the stuff we get today is just shit. I mean, it's just absolute terrible stuff. But like anything, everything happens in seasons in the movie genre. If you look at the movie business over the course of 60, 70, 80 years, you realize everything moves in cycles and seasons. And I think we will get more of those spoof-style comedies, including Naked Gun kind of comedies. Maybe not another Naked Gun movie per se, but more movies like that. All right, thanks a lot for the question. Let's go over again to Super Chat. I got another Super Chat that just came in, and this one comes to us from Who Flung Poo, what a great name, who wrote, "Which DC, I think you meant EU instead of AU, which DCEU movie would you like to see?" I would like to see them reboot. That's what I want to see them do. And then I just want to see the main players, man. I want to see Superman. I want to see Batman. Be great if they can get Green Lantern going again. I'd be interested in a Hawkman movie. I think there's some cool stuff you can do there. But the most important thing to me is that DC gets this ship right. Scrap what you got. It obviously didn't work. I mean, I like the movies. Everybody knows that. But just because I like it doesn't mean I bury my head in the sand and ignore the facts. The facts are, it hasn't worked, and the audience has been abandoning it. That's just the facts. There's no debating around that. That's the facts. And if that's the facts, then it doesn't matter if I've been enjoying the films. You've got to do what's best for the franchise. And the best thing for the franchise is get this thing going in the right direction. Start fresh. Do it. We've seen it work in the comic book genre. No reason that DC can't do it too. Let's see. This next one comes to us from, this next tweet, I should say, comes to us from H. Yenny B, who writes, "John, does Christopher Nolan have a new upcoming project?" I want to say yes, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, to be honest. I cannot think off the top of my head which one it is. So he may not have something on the books right now. I'm sure he knows what he's going to do next. But as far as what officially is coming up, I don't think they've made any sort of announcement on that level. All right, let's go back over to the Super Chat. Another Super Chat has come in, and this one comes to us from Jeremiah J, who writes, Justice League is at 481 million US dollars. Actually, it's a little bit higher than that. I believe right now it's at 496. So I believe it's a little bit higher than 481. Anyway, there is no salvaging. I know opening weekend is bad, but there is no redemption with worldwide. No, this is the important thing to keep in mind, guys. This is absolutely vital to keep in mind, okay? With most movies, like everybody's expecting that the international numbers is going to save it. This is so important to know. Stop what you're doing. Pay attention to this. This is absolutely vital. 95% of movies, if not more, when they open in the US, they open around the world at different times. Like a lot of movies will open in the US, then it'll open in this market maybe a week later, then it'll open in these 18 markets a week after that, then it'll open in these 14 markets a week after that, and then open in these 5 other markets maybe another month after that. And that's what happens. You know, with like Spider-Man Homecoming opened up and had big numbers, but it's like we had to wait for like, what, a month or two for it to open in China, and then we really saw what the real big numbers of Spider-Man Homecoming were going to be, right? Justice League is not in that category because Justice League opened everywhere on the same day except Japan. Japan was the only major market that Justice League did not open in already. They all opened on the same day. So there's not going to be this late riding cavalry coming in of, say, China. It's already opened in China. It already's done its business in China. So it's not like there's these 5 major international markets that are going to come in and save the day, ride on their horse. Woohoo! It's going to ride in there and save the Justice League by delivering an extra $150 million. That's not happening. It's already opened in all the major markets. There's not going to be some bottom of the ninth. Coming up to bat now is China, and China steps up to bat for Justice League and adds another $200 million to its box office. That's not happening. It already opened everywhere. That's why when I would like argue with some people who would say, but John, don't look at just the domestic opening weekend. Look at the worldwide opening weekend. It was huge. That's because it opened everywhere at the same time. Other movies don't do that. So there's no point in comparing what Justice League did on its opening weekend internationally with what other films did on their opening weekends internationally when Justice League opened in all the markets at the same time and other movies don't do that. There's no point in comparing it. So while it has this early rush that it looks like has big worldwide numbers, the reality is, but now you blew your load. It's done. You fired the one bullet you had. This movie, minimum, needs to make $650 million worldwide. Minimum, probably closer to $700 million, just to break even. And we're talking about Justice League, dudes. We're talking about Justice League. It should have been $1 billion movie easy. So, yeah, it's great that right now it's about to cross 500 million worldwide. That's great. But guess what? It already blew its load. It's fired all of its bullets. China's not about to come riding in and open up in China because it already did. That's what I keep trying to emphasize to people because people don't realize that. And they're just thinking, oh, look, well, it's made almost $500 million already. And so it's going to keep going. So it's going to make $800, $900 million. This isn't like every other movie, which still has other major markets in its back pocket to still release in. It's not the case here. So that's really, really important to keep in mind. Okay. Final super chat I'll take today comes to us from C. Say, who writes, I like that name. Hey, John, love the show. Thoughts on Ricky Gervais? I love Ricky Gervais. I'm not a fan of him when he hosts award shows, to be honest. But I think his comedy is top notch. I used to listen to his podcast all that. Why did I stop listening to his podcast? I'm not sure why. I used to love his podcast too. I think he's a comedic genius. I really do. I really think he's an absolute comedic genius. So I'm a big fan of Ricky Gervais. Absolutely I am. Okay, let's take like just a couple of more Twitter questions here. Oh, and Road Warrior put in a super chat as well. Thank you so much, Road Warrior. I really appreciate that. All right. Next tweet comes to us from, where did it go? Here we go. Comes to us from, why won't it come up on the screen? There we go. The next tweet comes to us from a Nathan Vandor who writes, John, chances that the Infinity War is as good as the Avengers. Well, who knows? Here's the thing. A lot of people ask me, like, so one of the email questions I got, hey, John, what are the chances that Star Wars The Force Awakens gets a Best Picture nomination or Star Wars The Last Jedi gets a Best Picture nomination? I don't know. I haven't seen it. What are the chances that Infinity War is as good as Avengers? Every movie coming out has a chance to be as good as the Avengers. Every single movie that comes out in theaters, it's possible could be as good as the Avengers. We won't know till we see it. As far as Infinity War goes, sure, it has a chance to be as good as Avengers, just like every other movie has a chance. I haven't seen it yet. But the trailers have looked amazing. Yes, I agree. The trailer is amazing. The trailer is freaking fantastic. But we've all seen really great trailers to really bad movies, haven't we? We've all seen those. So I'm not willing to put my eggs in that basket yet. Could it be as good as Avengers? Could be. Could it be better? Sure, could be. But, you know, the upcoming, Phyllis Diller biopic, that could be as good or better than Avengers too. I mean, you just never know. We'll just have to wait and see. All right, next one comes to us from Gamelight, who says, do you think we can see John Bernthal in more leading roles after seeing Punisher? I think so. It's funny because John Bernthal, but that's the tough thing about John Bernthal too. The type of actor and performer he is, he seems better suited for most projects as the second level guy, as the best friend, as Ben Affleck's little brother, if you will, in The Account. He seems better as a second tier guy as opposed to the lead guy. Now, Punisher, big difference. He fit Punisher like a glove. He was perfect in Punisher. Will it give him some more opportunities? Sure, success will give you more opportunities. Will we ever see John Bernthal as a big leading guy? I'm not so sure. Will we see him have a very active, thriving, successful career? Absolutely, as my camera just blacked out for a second there. Will we see him have a thriving, successful acting career? Absolutely he will. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. Will it be as a lead guy? I'm not so sure about that. Let's see. This next one comes to us from Daniel Trauma, who writes, any word on what stage of development Scorsese's next film, The Irishman, is in? I believe it's shooting. If I remember correctly, I believe it is currently shooting. I could be wrong about that. I'll have to look that up, but I do believe it's now in front of cameras and shooting. The big thing to me, I'm having a hard time getting terribly excited about it because it's at Netflix. And I know, what we do know about this, is that it got turned down by almost all the other studios before it landed at Netflix. That makes me go, well, how good could it be? If studios are turning down a Martin Scorsese film, that must mean they really don't think it works. So then it lands at Netflix. And now look, if it started at Netflix, that would be fine. I'd be okay, great. But knowing that it got turned down by other studios first, that gives me a little bit of pause, to be honest with you. So I'm very intrigued. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I just don't know where my excitement level is for it right now, just because it did get turned down first. But hey, it comes out and is the best Martin Scorsese film ever. Wouldn't that be awesome? All right, guys, that will do it for me for this installment, this Sunday edition of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, guys, click the thumbs up button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, be friendly to each other, and leave some thoughts and comments, and have some good, fun, honest debate and discussion about the difference of opinions that we all have about our movies. Jump down to the comment section and leave that there. Again, guys, thank you so much for being here. I'll be back again a little bit later today with our box office report, and hopefully I'll have a Darkest Hour review in the next 48 hours to put up as well. My name's John Campea, guys. Thanks so much for joining me, and until next time, bye-bye.